So we've been talking for the past few days about fractions, decimals, and percent. I want you to see this little figure here that it shows that fractions, decimals, and percent are all different names that represent the same number. This model represents these three forms. It's like talking different languages, okay? There's different ways of writing things, different ways of notating things in math. And fractions, decimals, and percent are all different forms of writing the same value or number. If you take 50%, for example, that as a decimal, 0.5 or 0.50. As a fraction in simplest form, it's a half. You can express a fraction as a percent by first expressing the fraction as a decimal and then expressing the decimal as a percent. We've talked about that before. You really have everything you need to know in order to solve these problems right here that I'm about to show you. But in this video, I'd like to show you just a few more shortcuts that are going to make your life a little bit easier. There are a few other fractions that we haven't talked about that you might want to memorize. First of all, the thirds. 1/3 is an easy fraction to memorize as a decimal. 1/3 is a repeating decimal, 0.33333. So as a percent, that's 33%. 2/3 is another easy one. 2/3 is 0.6 repetitive. So as a percent, that's about 66.6, or you could round it to 67%. I want you to write those down, and I want you to try to commit these to memory. The other ones you should also have committed to memory is a half and the quarters. 1/4, 2/4, obviously 3/4. Now you have the thirds. Another easy fraction to memorize are the fifths. Okay, 1/5, 2/5, 3/5. If you can, try to memorize the fifths. Remember, these can be easily written as a fraction out of 100. If we just multiply by 20, you see that this is 20/100. So 1/5 is 20%. 2/5 is 40%. 3/5 is 60%. 4/5, what would that be? Hopefully you guessed it. That would be 80%. Okay, so add the fifths to your list of fractions to memorize. These are like the basic facts of fractions, guys. I want you to try to memorize the fifths, the half, the quarters, and there's another easy one. Ninths. The ninths are always going to be repetitive. I'll show you a shortcut. 1/9 is always, when you divide it, it's going to be 0.111 and so on. 2/9 is going to be 0.222. 3/9, hey, that's the same thing as 1/3. And we just learned that that's 0.333 repetitive. 4/9 is 0.4 repetitive. 5/9 is 0.5 repetitive. Are you seeing a pattern? So what's 7/9, everyone? 0.777 repetitive. Now, if we want to write this as a percent, let's round to the nearest whole. It's telling us to round to the nearest tenth. I want to round to the nearest whole for a second. So in this case, you would think, okay, it's 77%, but if we actually round, if we move the decimal, it's 77.7. So that actually rounds to 78%. Let's take a look at some of the other ninths. 0.11111, that's going to be 11%. That's going to be 22%. 0.3 repetitive is going to be 33%. 0.444, that's going to be 44%. When you get to 5/9, that's when you start rounding up. Because think about it, 0.555 is going to be 55.5%, so that makes it round up, so that becomes 56. 6/9 would be 67%. 7/9 would be 78%. 8/9 would be 89%. So it just rounds up once you get past 5/9. If I went too fast, pause the video and make sure you digest that and understand what I just showed you about the ninths. They're pretty easy to memorize. Okay, and I just want to do these other 3 examples for you, and then we'll be done for this video. So that one was 78%. There are no shortcuts on some of these, okay? You're going to have to do some division. 5/8, just do 5 divided by 8. Some people can memorize the 8. If you have a good memory, 8s are pretty easy to memorize. Not as easy as the other one. 1/8 is 0.125. If you can memorize that, then all you have to do is 0.125 times whatever the denominator is. So I could do 0.125 multiplied by 5. But I'm going to go ahead and divide this for now. 8 doesn't go into 5. 8 goes into 50 6 times. 6 times 8 is 48. Remainder 2. Bring down my 0. 8 goes into 22 times. 2 times 8 is 16. Remainder 4. Bring down another 0. And 8 goes into 45 times. There it is. 0.625. If I move the decimal 2 times, that would be 62.5%. If I was asked to round it to the nearest whole, that would be 63%. All right? Nothing really new there. We already learned how to do that. Same thing with 3/400. I'm not going to go ahead and do all that division. It ends up being 0.0075, which gives you a very small 0.75%. I do want to talk about this one for a minute. Take a look at it. What do you notice? I hope you see that that is an improper fraction. And my hint for the improper fraction is to turn it into a mixed number first. So divide 13 into 27, and you find out that that gives you 2 and 1/13. Okay? Because then, that makes your life a little bit easier. Instead of doing 27 divided by 13, all I'm going to have to do is this part. 1 divided by 13, because I already know it's going to be 200-something% because of the 2 wholes. Right? So you do a little division there. Now, if it's hard for you to convert the improper fraction to a mixed number in your head, then you may as well just go ahead and divide the whole thing. 27 divided by 13. But if you can divide this in your head, 13 plus 13 is 26. So 2 and 1/13. If you followed that, then this might be a shortcut for you. So I'm going to do 1 divided by 13. And that's going to give me a pretty small percent there. 13 into 100. Let's see. What's your guess? I'm going to guess 7. And what does that give me? 91. And I'm going to keep going here. That gives me a remainder of 9. And I'm going to bring down another 0. 13 goes into 90. It must be 6 times. And I don't really have to keep going here, because if I'm going to round to the nearest whole, I can already see what my decimal is. It's going to be 2. Remember, I had the 2 wholes? 0.076. If I move my decimal 2 times, 1, 2, then I'm going to have 207.6. And if I want to round that to the nearest whole percent, that's going to round up, and I'll have 208%. And now we're getting into the pretty hard stuff, guys. I hope you're taking close notes on these videos and paying close attention. I want you to try a few problems, and then we'll be done with this video for today. Why don't you just try 4A, actually go ahead and try 4B and 4D for me right now. Go ahead and do 4B and 4D. Pause the video. We'll go over them when you're finished. All right, I really hope that you took note of the ninths and you didn't waste your time dividing. I hope you remembered that 1/9 is 0.1111, which means that this is just 11% rounded to the nearest whole percent. 17/11. How did you do that? I'm curious. I hope you noticed that it was an improper fraction. And since it's an improper fraction, we can write it as a mixed number. Can you do this in your head? Try to follow me. 11 goes into 17 one time with 6 11s left over. So I know my percent is going to be 100-something%. So now I have to do 6 divided by 11 to find out what that something, that other part is. You see how I do that? 1 and 6 11ths? Okay, let's take a look. So 11 into 65 times. 5 times 11 is 55, remainder 5. Bring down a 0. 11 goes into 54 times, because 4 times 11 is 44. And that'll give me a remainder of 6. And here I see the repetition beginning. 11 goes into 65 times again. All right, you see a pattern. 60, 55, 50, 44, 60. You guess the next number is going to be 55. So it's going to be 0.5454. So my decimal, if I move it 2 times, it'll be 154.5%, which would round to 155%. Did you get that? All right, this is hard stuff. This is hard stuff, guys. Hang in there. Practice makes better. Let's do this again tomorrow, and I'll see you then.